Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Shravani and I am a certified personal trainer and a sports nutritionist, and that is what most of my content revolves around. But I also enjoy doing activewear content, and from time to time we do a little bit of miscellaneous videos here and there. So if this is the first video you're watching, then please take a second to subscribe to the channel in case you enjoy this video. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Now, this is actually a video or a story that I never thought I would share on social media. But now that I think about it, I think it could really help a lot of aspiring coaches or new coaches in the industry to learn from my experiences and hopefully take back a few lessons that they are able to apply in their own career as a coach. Now, about a year ago, I was gaslighted and harassed by a client who told me I was the biggest lesson she'd ever learned in her life, and not in a good way. So after I pursued my MBA in e-business, I joined a cloud consulting firm and I was part of the service industry, and customer service is something that's very important to me and something that I wanted to bring into Team Meraki when I started the brand. So naturally, as anyone in the service industry will tell you, customer satisfaction is of utmost importance, and as somebody whose primary business is coaching, something like this happening is probably one of your worst nightmares. Now, through this video, I'm going to share my experience working with this kind of client and give you some tips and tricks on how you can avoid situations like this in the future. So grab a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever it is that you need, because this video is going to be a long one. Alright, so for starters, this client came to me through somebody who had been following me on social media for a while and was a relative of theirs. And this particular client was within the mid-40s range, which is always a little bit of a difficult group to train, especially because my business primarily is an online coaching service and we operate through an app. So personally, from being a coach for the last 3 years, one thing that I've observed is that people who are in the 40s or 50s range, they are a little bit resistant to change, and they are also not as tech savvy as someone who's, in their early to mid 20s or even in their 30s. And even if you ignore that, another thing that's very common amongst this age group is the heavy reliance on the numbers on the scale, and not as much emphasis is put on performance and health markers. Nevertheless, at Team Meraki, there is no discrimination in terms of your age. I have trained many clients in that range who were actually very good clients, and they saw great results because they trusted me throughout the process and they did exactly what was given to them. So I wasn't too hesitant to take this client on board. I was actually pretty confident. So the very first conversation I had with this potential client at that time was a pretty long, I would say 20 to 30 minute consultation call, and this is where we generally try to understand your history with training, with nutrition, whether you have any medical conditions or injuries that need to be looked into. And then if you do have a medical condition, then we require a physician's approval before we can start working on your program. So I sort of walked her through the whole process and just wanted to get an idea of what she's done in the past. And she mentioned to me that she had seen around 4 to 5 other nutritionists and coaches in the past, but didn't stick with any of them at all because she felt like the diets that were recommended to her were extremely restrictive and not something that she could adhere to. Now, this is something that, again, I've heard from a lot of clients, so I didn't see anything out of the ordinary here, but this was actually the first red flag. Because if you have been to 4 to 5 different nutritionists and walked out in a short period of time, then I think some further digging needs to happen as to why that happened. And I got surface level information on this, but I shrugged it off. I said, okay, no problem. You know what? The approach that we have at Team Meraki is very different. We don't do restrictive diets. In fact, we don't do fixed diet plans at all. As a coach, I find it very important to educate my clients about nutrition so that at the end of their term with me, they feel a lot more confident and don't necessarily need a coach for the nutrition aspect of things. So I explained how we use MyFitnessPal and we ask clients to sort of track their meals and then recommend how they could tweak their portions or maybe add some protein in to sort of have a well-balanced diet that supports their activity level. And at the end of this conversation, everything seemed fine. She was very positive and I was super excited to have her on board, and she signed up for a 6-month premium coaching package with us. Now, one goal that she mentioned to me was related to the number on the scale, and she wanted to drop about 10 kilos or so in 6 months, to which I responded by saying that this would be a byproduct of a healthier lifestyle, but I could not promise any numbers to her. At this point, I started observing that there was a little bit of an obsession with the number on the scale, and I realized that it would make her very panicky and very anxious if the numbers weren't moving in a direction that she wanted them to move in. And for this reason, at Team Meraki, we've had a behavioral psychologist on board right from the start, because we know that if a client has struggled with losing weight in the past or has had some form of struggle in the fitness and nutrition space, it can be difficult to break that mindset. And personally, I am not equipped with the kind of tools to do that, which is why I recommended that she could, access our behavioral psychologist at any point of time if she needed the help. At this point, she shrugged it off, saying that she didn't think she needed it, so I didn't pursue it either, and then we started with the program. Now, only about 3 weeks into the program, she told me that the flexible dieting method wasn't working out for her and that she wanted a fixed diet plan. Now, this client particularly works in sales, so she moves around a lot and walks quite a bit in her day, which is why sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming for her to figure out, what she should eat and what she shouldn't eat. And I think at that point, she just needed a little bit more structure in the program. Now, keep in mind that with every client who comes our way, even if there isn't a hard and fast rule to stick to a diet plan, we do give a sample diet plan out, and that was done here as well. So at this point, I said, hey, you know what, just look into the app. We've already given you a sample meal plan. You could maybe try following that for a few days. So she went through that and then said that, hey, I can't eat these things. So then I went out of my way to create a diet plan depending on what she had access to, given her work. And this is something that I had to go out of my way to do, and I don't mind doing it because it's taking more time. But the reason I mind doing this is because then you're not learning anything, right? You're just going to be following that diet plan for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then at the end of it, you get bored of it. You'll tell me to switch up the diet plan, and then at the end of 6 months, what do you have? You have 6 diet plans that you've followed for a few weeks, but you haven't really learned anything about macronutrients or how you should be fueling your body. At what time of the day should you be eating certain meals? What should you eat pre-workout, post-workout? These are things that you really learn by doing and asking questions. But then I figured, hey, you know what? If I am a coach, this is what I can do to help. So I went ahead and I made that plan and gave it to her. Once I gave her that plan for a few days, everything was fine. And then she started saying, hey, I can't stick to this plan. At which point I was like, what do you want? Like, what should I do? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm literally doing everything I can in my capacity to, adapt to your lifestyle and do the best that I can in terms of training and nutrition for you. Now, this is about 22 days into a 6-month plan, where she also started cribbing a little bit about how there was no progress and that she was losing faith in me and the plan. This is less than 4 weeks into a program, right? So what do I do here? As a coach, I'm like, hey, listen, please trust me on this. Things may not be moving as quickly as you want them to, but I assure you they are moving. And I'm certain about that, because for me, when it comes to showing a client progress, it comes down to data. We are very data driven, which is why on the app, we collect biometric data on a daily basis from our premium clients. So I actually had data to pull out and show her that, hey, look, this is the progress you've made and you should be very proud of it. So then I realized that there was a certain amount of disassociation from the numbers that was needed here. And the problem here was that she was comparing this progress to the progress she had seen with some other coach in the past whose diet she wasn't able to adhere to long term, and she quit eventually. But there was a certain expectation on, the rate of weight loss that I think she wanted but never communicated to me. And I was very clear in saying, hey, I can't promise you numbers. This is going to happen. And at this point, she was losing weight at a very good and steady rate. So once again, when I noticed that the numbers were making her very anxious, I recommended that, hey, you know what? We have the psychologist on board. Why don't you just talk to her and see if things get better? It can really help take the stress away from the numbers for a little bit and help you trust the process and just keep pushing, because I was seeing the progress and I really didn't know how to help this client because they just weren't on the same page as me. But this time when I recommended reaching out to the behavioral psychologist, I was met with a rather strange response. And this client told me, hey, with the amount of stress I've gone through in my life and the events that have happened in the past, I can counsel you on anxiety. I don't need anyone to counsel me. So once again, I feel like in that age group, it can be a little bit difficult. They are very set in their ways. So then I said, never mind, leave it. This person doesn't want to take the help. And that's fair. But as a coach, my goal here is to really guide you and advise you on things you can do to make your journey more fruitful. But if you don't want to take it, then there's nothing I can do. So then another week went by, and in this week, I was just thinking of, how do I make this person see the progress that they're making? Because they should be so proud of themselves. And instead, they're stressing about how there's no progress being made. So what I did was I created a progress log and I sent it to her. Now, because we collect biometric data, I'm also able to see not just how much weight she's lost in a month, but also how much of that came from body fat and how much of that came from lean mass. And the best thing was that in a month, she had lost 2 kilos, most of which came from body fat. She had lost almost little to no muscle mass in the process, and I was elated. I said, you know what, this is the best thing that could happen. Sometimes when we put people in a deficit, we see them losing more lean mass than anything else. And I was so proud. I said, you've done such a great job. And my goal here was to just make her aware of the progress that was happening. And I think I was expecting a little bit of a shift in mindset here. I thought this person would say, hey, you know what, you're right. I am making progress, and maybe I was overthinking a little bit. But that's not what happened. To my utter shock, she responded saying that there was no progress at all. She said, you know what, 2 kilos is nothing. I'm a fast gainer. I'm going to gain this overnight. Again, at this point, I was trying to be so patient. I said, hey, that's not how things work. You have lost close to 2 kilos of body fat. It's not just water weight that you'll gain overnight. And that's not how things work. You don't just... I know people joke about this all the time. They say, hey, you know what? I smell a Lay's packet and I gain weight. But all of that is just a figure of speech, right? At the end of the day, it does come down to your energy balance. And if you've worked so hard for 3-4 weeks, you've not missed your workouts, you're walking 10k steps a day, and your diet is okay, a little bit all over the place, but even then you've lost body fat. And this is like without even being 100% adherent to the program that I had given you. So when this started coming in, when this person says, hey, 2 kilos is nothing, I'll gain this overnight, this is red flag number 2. Because this is where the manipulation or gaslighting began. And literally, I am showing you data and you're calling it crap. You're saying that it does not hold any value. So this is where even I started getting a little bit anxious and frustrated. And I'm like, how do I talk to this client? Like, how do I communicate? Because this person has closed the doors on my face when I am showing them something that should make them happy. Now, the conversation started moving to this point where she said, hey, you know what, at this rate, I'm just going to lose about 4 kilos by the end of this program, and my goal is 10 kilos, blah, blah, blah. So at this point, I was like, okay, I am an engineer. I love data. I love math. Let me just say, hey, you've lost 2 kilos in a month. You're here with me for 6 months. If I'm not wrong, if things are perfect and they go linear, you're still going to lose 12 kilos by the end of the program. Like, if we are going to talk about absolutes and you're actually going to say the rate of weight loss results in this, then the math ain't mathing. Like, I'm like, what are you saying? At this rate, you lose 12. And even if things don't work out, it's still higher than the goal that you've set for yourself. And then very promptly the response came, hey, you know what, you're right, but I can't guarantee that my activity level is going to be as high as it is currently 2 months from now. Blah, blah, blah. Again, I said, hey, you're on this program. I'm your coach and I'm going to tweak your caloric intake. I'm going to tweak your training level based on your activity level or the changes in your life. We don't do a one-size-fits-all plan, and it's definitely not like a take this plan and do it for 6 months. There are constant tweaks happening because it is a very feedback-oriented program in which either the feedback comes from the client or we look at the data and we say, hey, okay, things are moving like this. These are the changes I need to make for my training and nutrition for the client so that they start seeing results. So again, I tried really patiently to talk to her about energy balance and just, how these things work. But what happened is I started getting very, very stressed. I just didn't know how to crack the code. I didn't know how to break down this client's wall and just help them see the progress they were making. I was feeling so helpless, and every time the client's name would pop up on my phone, I would genuinely, my heart would start racing. I was very anxious and I would panic because I knew there was no winning. There was nothing I could say that could make her feel better. So day 22, all of this happens. Now between day 22 and the end of a month, I don't think there was much communication happening. But then just roughly about a month into the program, she messaged me saying, hey, I am not going to be able to continue at this point. I don't know if there is an option of a refund, but I just want to let you know that I'm not going to be following the program anymore. To which I said, hey, I'm so sorry to let you go, but we don't have a refund policy unless there has been negligence from the coach's end. But nevertheless, I wish you all the best. So that's what I said. And I don't think that was the right answer. This is when things got personal, and she starts saying to me, yeah, whatever, like, she starts saying I've already deleted the app, and mentioned that in the form of feedback. And I'm literally quoting her. She says, you were never invested in the process. No feedback on food, no feedback otherwise, only motivational talks. Anyway, that defines the way you handle things and the kind of person you are. I can't say that I wasn't expecting this, but this came out of nowhere, and everything in this statement was false because I was there every step of the way. I have receipts from the WhatsApp conversations, from the conversations on the app. I have all of that. So I'm just like, where is this coming from? Like, why is there so much anger? I don't get it. And I was there at every step of the way. So like deep down, I knew I did nothing wrong, but it definitely took me aback. So at this point, I had to really take a deep breath, and I responded very graciously. And I said, hey, I went out of my way to give you a fixed diet plan, even though that's not something I do. I also constantly recommended how you can incorporate more protein into your diet, especially on the days that you're at work all day and you maybe have only time to pick up something from the supermarket, and how I shared a progress log to objectively show her the progress she was making, which otherwise, success when it comes to a fitness program is highly subjective. And to that, I was met with, thank you for the wishes. You are the biggest learning in my life. Now, this is where I drew the line. I said, what? There is no point of continuing this conversation because it got so personal. And this is where I reached out to my team, my co-founder, and I said, what? I have done everything I can. I've replied graciously. I have done everything in my capacity, and there is nothing I could have done better. And I know it for sure. I gave my 100%, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And that's when I stopped responding completely. So as you can tell, that was a horrible experience. That was probably the worst experience I've ever had in my 3 years as a coach here, trying to build my business from scratch. Thankfully, I've only had one other client who has gaslit me and manipulated me. But other than that, everyone else I've worked with, and at Team Meraki, we've worked with over 250 clients at this point, have been an absolute delight to work with. So if you have worked with us in the past and chosen us as your coaches, I am so grateful to you, and thank you for being coachable. Thank you for trusting us, because there is a huge amount of trust that you need to put in your coach, and you have to really work together. It's a collaborative approach. But if you're a new coach, then here's a few things that I learned from this experience that I think will be valuable for you in your journey. So step number 1, I think it's very important to identify your target audience. What I mean by that is you do not need to coach anyone and everyone under the sun. Everyone has this sort of a niche or a group that they work best with. I personally think I work great with people from all the way from 18 years old to maybe 35. I think that those 17 years, like, that is my bracket, which I personally have had great success with. I've built a very good rapport with clients who've been in that age range. But anything above 40 is a little bit tricky for me, and this I've learned from experience, of course. So it's very important to identify that and understand that it's okay to say no if you have somebody who doesn't fit in that range and you're not comfortable or you're not confident that you'll be able to communicate with them well. And see, the thing about communication is there are two sides of it. One is you sending out the message, and the second part is them receiving the message. If there is any interception in between because of the generation gap or how different you guys are, how different your thoughts are, then it's not going to be received well. And then that's what messes things up. So I think defining your target audience and deciding the group of people you want to work with is very important. Number 2, always do an interview with the client. And if you see any red flags at all, or you see anything that the client is saying that does not align with how you work or operate, then it's better to draw the line and say, hey, you know what? I don't think we are a good fit for each other, but maybe I can recommend you to my other friend who might be able to do a better job at guiding you, right? So it took me a very, very long time to turn down clients, because when you're starting a business, every client matters, right? I have bills to pay. I have a student loan that I pay by myself, and all of that weighs down on you. So I know it can be difficult, but there is no amount of money that is going to be worth the kind of stress and anxiety that a client like this will bring into your life. For that 1 week or maybe 1.5 weeks, I was just perpetually anxious and scared, and I just didn't know what to do. There was a lot of self-doubt that started coming in, and it's not worth it at all. So please understand that it's okay to say no to clients who you think are not coachable. Number 3 is to have everything in writing. Before you sign a client on board, make sure that you're all on the same page about things like refund policies and what you will do, like your scope of work, what you will do, what you won't do. Be very, very clear and be very cutthroat about it, because you are the coach here. You are the person who's going to be guiding this client and not the other way around. So you need to have a little bit of authority there, because number 1, it also instills confidence in your client that, okay, this person knows what they're doing and they're going to be guiding me right. And number 2, if you have a problematic client who wants to come in and say, okay, I'm going to tell you how I want my diet plan to be, or I'm going to tell you how I want my training to be. This is where you say, hey boss, you know what? No, I am the coach here. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're not going to tell me what to do. Now, some of you might think that this is arrogant. It could be perceived as arrogant for sure. But I think when you are a coach, when you have literally studied and gotten certified to do this, you need to hold your ground, because otherwise people will walk all over you. And a lot of clients feel entitled to telling you how to run your program, because everyone has an opinion about food. Okay, we've all been eating since we were children. So everyone thinks that they know a little bit about it based on what they've read, what they've seen, what they've heard, and what they've seen practiced at home. So very gently, you should be able to communicate with them that, you know what, this is going to be a waste of your time. I think we need to focus a little bit more on this, but be very affirmative in your approach. The next lesson I want you to learn is, if at any point of time you go through what I went through, let's say 1 month into a 6-month program, you should have some sort of a policy that enables you to fire the client then and there. Okay, now if you're a client who is listening to this, you might say, hey, but that's so unfair. No worries. If you genuinely feel like a client is messing with your own mental health or is getting in the way of how you do things, then it's okay to say goodbye to them. You could have a refund policy for this. Whatever it is, you've got to work this out, but have that policy, because otherwise, now in my case, this client decided to leave, but if they didn't, then the next 5 months would have been very, very difficult for me. And the next lesson is to set expectations straight right from the start. No matter what it is, you need to be very clear. This is what you're going to get. This is what you aren't going to get. I think at Team Meraki, our approach is very, very health and performance driven, and we just really don't put an importance on the numbers at all. I understand that for certain cases, if you are really on the obese side, there is a risk of cardiovascular health disease, etc. Yes, you need to work on the numbers, but that is merely a byproduct of you following everything that your coach has given you. Now, when you have your initial consultation calls, you'll have some clients come to you and say, I want to lose 10 kilos, I want a flat stomach, and I want to be able to fit into a dress size number XYZ by the end of 6 months, right? Now, when I used to hear this in the past, I used to retaliate and say, hey, you know what, I don't think you should have these kind of goals. It's a little impractical, blah, blah, blah. So I still have that conversation. I try to make them understand, okay, this is going to be a byproduct, to which they usually agree. But then I also tell them, okay, you want these 3 things from me. I'll give them to you. If you give me these 3 things, 100% compliance in your nutrition game. I don't want to see a single day where you're off track. I want to see 100% dedication in your training, not a single day to be missed. And also 100% dedication when it comes to managing your stress, sleep, and hydration. Are you willing to give me this commitment? Because if you do, we are going to see some magic happen. And when you shift that onus onto them, when you shift the responsibility onto them, is when they start realizing, that's fair. That shift in perspective is going to be very important in setting expectations straight and making sure that the client and you are on the same page throughout the time that they are with you. In conclusion, all I want to say is, when you are in a service-based industry, you're definitely going to come across a client or 2, maybe more, if you're unlucky, in the span of your career. But don't let that end up in self-doubt. Don't let that make you feel like, I want to give up this career altogether. I don't think I belong here. You absolutely do. Now, not everyone's for everyone. I think this goes across friendships, relationships as well, and even in your professional life. So there will be people you don't see eye to eye with, and it's okay to let them go. Remember that if something like this happens to you, it's just a mere bump in your journey, and 6 months later, it's not going to affect you at all. Just make sure you focus on giving your clients the absolute best service that you can give in your capacity, and don't worry about anything else. And also always make sure that you have somebody else, a team member, a co-founder, or someone who can help you navigate these situations if they do arise. I think my co-founder was just absolutely fantastic in backing me up because he knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, and that support can be a game changer for you in these situations. Alright guys, so I'm going to be closing out this very long video here. I really hope you enjoyed this little story time. Other than being entertaining, I really do hope that there is something that you learned from here, and if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comments down below if you did. I have never tried this format of content before, but I personally love consuming this kind of content. So let me know if you enjoyed it in the comments below, and if there's anything else you want to hear from me, and if I should make this a series, because I have a bunch of really interesting story times from not only my career, like my professional life, but also from my personal life that I think would be interesting to discuss here. If you stay till the end, thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate that you're here. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!